My name is Jessica Davis, and at 29, I learned that family loyalty has its limits. While I postponed college to care for my dying father, my sister Amanda chased her dreams in New York. For 3 years, I changed bedpans and managed medications while she built her career. I never expected gratitude, but I certainly never expected what happened last Thanksgiving. When Amanda stood up and announced they had voted me out of the family, the folder I brought that day changed everything. Sometimes betrayal comes full circle in ways no one expects. Before I dive into this story, let me know where you're watching from in the comments below. Hit that subscribe button if you've ever dealt with ungrateful family members and want to hear how I finally stood up for myself. I grew up in a middle-class neighborhood just outside Boston. Our house was nothing special, a modest colonial with faded blue siding and creaky stairs, but it was home. From early on, the dynamics between my sister Amanda and me were clear to anyone paying attention. For years older than me, Amanda was always the star of the family, the one with ambition. The one who would go places, as our mother Margaret would proudly tell her book club friends. My father Robert was different. A small business owner who ran an office supply company. He taught me about finances from the time I could count. Jessica, he would say while showing me the business ledgers at the kitchen table, understanding money means understanding freedom. Those moments with him shaped my future in ways I could never have predicted. While Mom doted on Amanda, driving her to debate competitions and ballet recitals, Dad and I formed our own bond. I enjoyed helping him organize inventory and learning how the business operated. It wasn't that Mom didn't love me, but she had always wanted a daughter who would be what she never could. And Amanda fit that mold perfectly. By high school, our family roles were firmly established. Amanda was class president, valedictorian, and homecoming queen, while I maintained solid B grades and developed a reputation as the reliable friend everyone could count on. I never resented my sister's spotlight because I genuinely enjoyed being the steady one, the person who kept things running smoothly behind the scenes. Family vacations highlighted our differences. Amanda would be front and center in all the photos, posing dramatically at the Grand Canyon or the Statue of Liberty, while I carried the extra water bottles and made sure no one forgot their sunscreen. Mom would fuss over Amanda's outfits for dinner, while Dad and I would discuss the best routes for tomorrow's adventures. During my senior year of high school, Dad started complaining about persistent headaches and fatigue. At first, we all dismissed it as stress from work, but when he collapsed during one of Amanda's award ceremonies, our family's trajectory changed forever. The diagnosis came 3 days later, a rare form of lymphoma that would require aggressive treatment. Amanda left for Columbia University 2 months later. I still remember helping her pack while Dad rested in the bedroom down the hall. "You know I can't turn down this scholarship," she said as she folded designer clothes I could never afford into expensive luggage. "Besides, Mom says they've got everything under control." They didn't. Mom was overwhelmed by Dad's care needs, and the business began suffering without his daily oversight. So when my acceptance letter from Boston University arrived, I made the decision that would shape the next several years of my life. I would attend community college part-time while helping at home. It was supposed to be temporary, just until Dad stabilized. "You don't have to do this," Dad told me when I explained my decision. The disappointment in his eyes was evident, but so was the relief. We both knew that without my help, the family would struggle. That night, I overheard my mother on the phone with Amanda. "Your sister is staying home for college," she said. "Yes, I know it's not ideal, but you know how she is. Always wanting to be the martyr." The words stung, but they also hardened something inside me. I wasn't being a martyr, I was being responsible. The fact that my own mother couldn't see the difference was the first sign that my sacrifices would never be truly appreciated. The pattern was set. While Amanda pursued her dreams in New York, posting glamorous photos of parties and internships on social media, I learned to navigate the healthcare system, juggle medical appointments, and keep our household functioning. What I didn't realize then was how completely my family would come to take my presence for granted, or how dramatically the tables would eventually turn. The doctor's words still echo in my memory. Stage 3 lymphoma. Aggressive treatment required. High risk, but treatable. Within a week, our living room transformed into a makeshift medical station. The coffee table became home to pill organizers, appointment books, and insurance paperwork, while a hospital bed replaced the couch where Dad and I used to watch Red Sox games. My college plans shifted from full-time at Boston University to part-time at Essex Community College. Even those classes proved challenging to maintain as Dad's treatment intensified. The chemotherapy left him violently ill, his once robust frame shrinking until his clothes hung on him like they belonged to someone else entirely. "Jessica, have you seen my blue cardigan?" My mother would call out at 7 in the morning, more concerned about her outfit for her weekly lunch with friends than Dad's 9 o'clock appointment with the oncologist. That became our new normal. Mom retreated into a world of denial, maintaining her social calendar while I transformed into a part-time nurse, accountant, and household manager. My daily routine became a monotonous cycle of caregiving. I woke at 5 to prepare Dad's medication, then helped him to the bathroom and into fresh clothes before making breakfast that he rarely ate. By 8, we'd be on our way to whatever medical appointment was scheduled for that day. Afternoons were filled with household chores and calls to insurance companies, often being placed on hold for hours while I watched Dad doze fitfully in his recliner. Mom floated through the house like a visitor, occasionally asking how things were going, but never really wanting to hear the answer. She kept her book club meetings and hair appointments, claiming she needed self-care to get through this difficult time. Meanwhile, I forgot what it felt like to meet friends for coffee or go to a movie without worrying about who was watching Dad. Amanda called once a week, usually on Sunday evenings. The conversations followed a predictable pattern. She'd ask how Dad was doing, make sympathetic noises at my update, then launch into stories about her exciting life in New York. Her internship at a prestigious marketing firm, her new boyfriend from a wealthy Connecticut family, the networking events opening doors to her bright future. "I wish I could visit more," she would say, "but things are just so crazy here." In 3 years, she came home 4 times, never staying longer than a weekend. Each visit featured the same performance: tearful hugs with Dad, promises to call more often, and an early departure due to some unmissable opportunity in the city. During her second year away, I discovered the first of many betrayals. While sorting through bills at the kitchen table, I noticed a bank statement showing a transfer of $5,000 to Amanda. Confused, I asked Dad about it when Mom was out. "Your sister needed help with rent," he explained weakly. "The city is expensive, and we didn't want her to have to take a second job while she's focusing on her career." I said nothing, but the irony wasn't lost on me. While I put my future on hold and worked part-time at a local accounting firm to help with our bills, my parents were sending money to Amanda for her Manhattan apartment. As Dad's medical bills mounted, I became increasingly involved in our family finances. With my self-taught accounting skills improving through my part-time job, I organized payment plans, negotiated with insurance companies, and found ways to reduce expenses. I discovered that my parents' retirement savings were being rapidly depleted, a fact they seemed either unaware of or unwilling to address. One evening, while scrolling through social media, I saw Amanda's post about her vacation to Cancun with her boyfriend Brian. "Living my best life," read the caption under a photo of her sipping a cocktail on a pristine beach. That same morning, I had been on the phone begging our electricity provider not to cut service despite our late payment. The resentment grew, a quiet, persistent presence in my chest. Yet each time I considered confronting my family about the imbalance, Dad would have another bad day, another emergency, and my anger would give way to the pressing needs of the moment. Michael Foster, Dad's longtime friend and business associate, was the only person who seemed to notice my situation. He stopped by regularly, ostensibly to discuss business matters, but always made time to check on me. You know, Jessica, what you're doing is remarkable, he told me one evening as we sat on the porch after Dad had fallen asleep. But you need to make sure you're not lost in the process. I brushed off his concern. I'm fine. This is temporary. His reply haunted me for months afterward. Be careful. Temporary has a way of becoming permanent when it's convenient for everyone else. 3 years into Dad's treatment, I had deferred my education indefinitely, working 30 hours a week at the accounting firm while managing Dad's care and keeping our household from financial collapse. I was 26 years old with no degree, no savings of my own, and an increasingly bitter awareness that my sacrifice was expected rather than appreciated. Meanwhile, Amanda graduated with honors, secured a job at a top marketing agency, and continued her relationship with Brian, who worked in finance and came from old money. Their life, displayed in carefully curated social media posts, seemed to exist in a parallel universe, one where illness and financial strain were foreign concepts. What no one in my family realized was that during those 3 years of caregiving, I was building skills that would eventually change everything. Managing complex medical systems, negotiating with creditors, and learning accounting principles at work and at home was preparing me for a confrontation none of us could have anticipated. The first sign of Dad's recovery came on an ordinary Tuesday in April. I entered his room with his morning medications to find him sitting up, reading glasses perched on his nose, reviewing the newspaper, something he hadn't done in months. The socks lost again, he grumbled, looking more like his old self than I had seen in years. His oncologist confirmed what we had cautiously begun to hope. The treatment was working. The cancer was in retreat. Over the next few months, Dad gradually regained strength, color returning to his face, appetite improving, and his interest in the world reawakening. With each positive medical report, I allowed myself to imagine resuming my own life. Perhaps I could finally return to school full-time, maybe even transfer to a 4-year college. After years of putting my dreams on hold, I tentatively began researching programs and scholarships. As Dad improved, our family dynamics shifted in unexpected ways. Amanda suddenly developed a renewed interest in family matters. Her weekly calls increased to twice weekly, and she began planning monthly visits home. I'm so relieved Dad's doing better, she gushed during a Sunday dinner, her first visit in 6 months. I've been so worried in New York, feeling helpless being so far away. Mom nodded sympathetically. It's been hard on all of us, especially Amanda. She's so sensitive. I nearly choked on my potatoes, but said nothing. Dad's improvement meant he was ready to return to his business, but 3 years of absence had taken its toll. When he asked me to help review the company's financial situation, I discovered concerning discrepancies. Sales had declined, expenses had increased, and cash flow was dangerously tight. Someone's been mismanaging things, I told him after spending a weekend reviewing the books. And there are some withdrawals I can't account for. Dad looked uncomfortable. Your mother needed money for household expenses while I was sick. But the numbers didn't add up. Our household expenses had been primarily covered by my income and careful budgeting. Where had the extra money gone? The answer came during an accidental discovery. While searching for an insurance document in Mom's desk, I found bank statements showing regular transfers to Amanda over the past 3 years, totaling nearly $50,000 beyond the college expenses and rent assistance I already knew about. When I confronted Dad privately, his response surprised me. Your sister has an image to maintain for her career. Networking events, proper clothing, it all costs money. And what about my career, Dad? What about my future? His expression hardened in a way I had never seen before. You chose to stay, Jessica. Amanda chose to pursue opportunities. The injustice of his words struck me like a physical blow. I hadn't chosen to stay any more than he had chosen to get cancer. I had done what was necessary for our family's survival. As Dad's health continued to improve, I implemented the accounting skills I developed to help stabilize the business. I identified inefficiencies, renegotiated vendor contracts, and developed a payment plan for outstanding debts. Within 6 months, the company was showing signs of recovery, largely due to my behind-the-scenes efforts. Dad became increasingly dependent on my business guidance, though he rarely acknowledged it explicitly. I created new inventory tracking systems, modernized the accounting practices, and even developed a modest online presence for the company. Sales began to improve, and with them, our family's financial situation. Meanwhile, Amanda announced her engagement to Brian. The diamond on her finger cost more than my annual salary, and the wedding plans quickly escalated into an extravagant affair. "We're thinking June at the Brighton Resort," Amanda told us over dinner. "It's exclusive, but Brian's parents know the owners." "Wonderful," Mom exclaimed. "We'll need to start planning immediately." No one mentioned how we would afford our portion of what would clearly be an expensive wedding. When I raised concerns privately with Dad, he dismissed them. "We'll manage. This is important for your sister." The wedding planning consumed our family for months. I continued working at the accounting firm while essentially running Dad's business operations and planning my return to college. Mom and Amanda spent weekends visiting venues, florists, and caterers, their bond strengthening through shared excitement. During this time, I met Eleanor Winters, the owner of the accounting firm where I worked. Impressed by my self-taught skills and work ethic, she took an interest in my situation. "You have a natural talent for this," she told me after I helped resolve a particularly complex client issue. "Have you considered getting your CPA?" When I explained my interrupted education, she nodded thoughtfully. "When you're ready to go back to school, let me know. We have scholarship programs for promising employees, and there could be a position waiting for you afterward." For the first time in years, I glimpsed a possible path forward, a way to transform my detour into a destination. Amanda's wedding was a lavish affair with 300 guests, a 6-tier cake, and a honeymoon to Bali. I served as bridesmaid, but was notably absent from the maid of honor position, which went to Amanda's college roommate. During the reception, I overheard 2 of Amanda's friends. "Which one is the sister again?" "The plain one in the blue dress. Apparently, she lives with the parents. Never finished college or something." I slipped away from the reception early, unnoticed by my family who were basking in Amanda's perfect day. The final shift in family dynamics came when Amanda and Brian purchased a house just 15 minutes from our parents. Suddenly, Amanda was a constant presence at family dinners, often dropping by unannounced to discuss business ideas with Dad. Brian and I were thinking, she announced one evening, that it might be time to expand the business. Maybe open a second location. Dad looked intrigued. Mom beamed with pride. No one asked my opinion, despite the fact that I had been essentially running the company's operations for months. That night, while reviewing the business accounts, I noticed something troubling. Small but regular amounts were being transferred to an account I didn't recognize. When I traced the transactions, they led to a personal account under Amanda's name. The discovery left me cold. After everything I had sacrificed, after all the work I had done to keep our family afloat, my sister was skimming money from the business I had helped save. I began gathering documentation, tracking the transfers, building a case. I said nothing to my family, but I prepared myself for the confrontation I knew was coming. When Amanda texted me about hosting Thanksgiving at her new house, inviting the extended family for a special announcement, I knew something significant was about to happen. The night before Thanksgiving, I carefully organized my evidence into a folder. Michael, who had remained a steadfast friend throughout the years, warned me to be careful. "Family dynamics can be explosive, Jessica. Are you sure you want to do this?" I wasn't sure of anything except that I could no longer remain silent. "I have to protect myself, Michael. No one else will." As I prepared to leave for Amanda's house the next day, folder tucked securely in my bag, I had no idea how dramatically that Thanksgiving would change our family forever. By spring, with Dad's health continuing to improve, I finally returned to college part-time. Essex Community College wasn't my original dream school, but at 27, I was just grateful to be moving forward again. I chose accounting as my major, building on the skills I developed out of necessity. "You're one of our most promising students," my financial accounting professor told me after I aced the midterm. "Your real-world experience gives you an edge." That edge had come at a steep price, but I was determined to transform my detour into a destination. Eleanor's mentorship at the accounting firm had opened my eyes to possibilities I hadn't considered before. With her encouragement, I developed a plan to transfer to a 4-year university after completing my associate degree. Meanwhile, Amanda's wedding consumed our family for months. The event itself was a spectacle of excess at Brighton Resort's Grand Ballroom. 300 guests, a designer gown that cost more than a car, and centerpieces flown in from Holland. I stood among 5 other bridesmaids, wearing a dress that had been altered 3 times to meet Amanda's exacting standards. During the reception, I overheard Mom talking to her friends. "Amanda has always been our achiever. She gets that from me, you know." No mention of who had kept the family functioning during the crisis years. No acknowledgement of who had preserved their financial stability. The invisibility of my contributions stung, but by then, I was growing accustomed to it. After returning from their 3-week honeymoon in Bali, Amanda and Brian purchased a colonial revival house in Wellesley, just 15 minutes from our parents. The house, with its pristine landscaping and newly renovated kitchen, became the center of family gatherings, with Amanda hosting Sunday dinners where she regaled everyone with stories of her marketing career successes. "The CEO specifically requested me for the Richardson account," she would announce, while Mom gazed at her adoringly. During one such dinner, Amanda casually mentioned her interest in Dad's business. "Brian thinks it has untapped potential. Maybe we could discuss some modernization strategies, Dad." Dad, still regaining his energy after his illness, nodded enthusiastically. "I've been thinking it might be time to bring fresh ideas into the company." I remained silent, though I had been modernizing the business for months, implementing new accounting software, creating digital inventory systems, and developing the company's first coherent marketing strategy. My improvements had increased profits by 20% in the past quarter alone, a fact Dad seemed to have forgotten. As autumn approached, I began noticing irregularities in the business accounts. Small discrepancies at first, amounts that could be attributed to clerical errors. But as I dug deeper, I discovered a pattern of unauthorized transfers to an external account. One evening, while everyone was still at the office, I traced the account number. It belonged to Amanda. Over the past 6 months, she had transferred nearly $30,000 from the business to her personal account. My hands shook as I printed the transaction records. When I brought them to Dad in his office, his reaction stunned me. "Amanda mentioned she might need some advances for consultancy work she's doing," he said dismissively. "I'm sure there's a simple explanation. Dad, there's no consultancy work documented anywhere. These are unauthorized withdrawals." His face hardened. "I think you're overstepping, Jessica. Amanda has plans for the business that could really take us to the next level." "What plans?" "She has no experience in this industry. She has an MBA from Columbia," he snapped. "And Brian's family has connections that could transform our client base." I left his office feeling as though the ground had shifted beneath me. After everything I had sacrificed, after all the work I had done to save the business, I was being pushed aside for Amanda's ambitions. That evening, Mom cornered me in the kitchen. "Your father thinks you're being controlling about the business, Jessica. You need to understand that Amanda has professional experience that you lack." The injustice of her words left me speechless. The next day, I signed a lease on a small apartment near campus. When I told my parents I was moving out, Mom seemed relieved. "It's probably for the best," she said. "You need to focus on your studies, and Amanda can help your father with the business now." I moved out the following weekend, taking only my personal belongings and leaving behind the family I had sacrificed everything to preserve. Michael helped me transport my things to the small 1-bedroom apartment I could barely afford on my part-time salary. "You know this isn't right," he said as we unpacked boxes in my new living room. "They're taking advantage of you, and now they're pushing you out because you've started to stand up for yourself." I knew he was right. But acknowledging the truth was too painful. I threw myself into my studies and my work at the accounting firm, trying to build a life independent of my family's dysfunction. In early November, I received a text from Amanda, hosting Thanksgiving at our house this year. "The whole family will be there. I have a special announcement to make. 3 p.m. on Thursday." The message was followed by her address, as though I might have forgotten where she lived. I hesitated before responding with a simple, "I'll be there." Something about the invitation felt off. Amanda and I had barely spoken since I moved out, and when we did, there was a tension that hadn't existed before. She knew I had discovered the unauthorized transfers. Yet, she was inviting me to a family gathering where she planned to make a special announcement. The week before Thanksgiving, I made a decision. I would attend the dinner, but I would come prepared. I spent evenings compiling documentation of Amanda's financial misconduct, organizing bank statements, transfer records, and timestamps that proved she had been systematically embezzling from the family business. I placed everything in a manila folder, making copies for myself that I stored securely at my apartment. Michael warned me to be careful. "Family confrontations around holidays can get ugly," he cautioned. "Are you sure this is the right time?" "I'm not planning to confront anyone," I replied. "This is just insurance. If Amanda's announcement is what I think it might be, I need to be ready." The night before Thanksgiving, I could barely sleep. Years of sacrifice, betrayal, and unacknowledged resentment had led to this moment. Whatever happened at Amanda's dinner would determine whether I could salvage any relationship with my family or if I needed to cut ties completely and move forward alone. As I drove to Amanda's house the next day, folders secured in my bag, I steeled myself for whatever was coming. Little did I know that the confrontation would be more dramatic than even I had anticipated, and that the family dynamics would be permanently altered by what transpired over Amanda's carefully arranged Thanksgiving dinner. Pulling up to Amanda and Brian's house on Thanksgiving Day, I took a moment to compose myself in the car. Their colonial revival home looked like something from a magazine cover, with professionally arranged fall decorations flanking the front door and warm light spilling from every window. I checked my appearance in the rearview mirror, straightened my blazer, and patted the bag containing my folder of evidence. "Just get through dinner," I whispered to myself. "Stay calm, no matter what happens." The door swung open before I could ring the bell. Amanda stood there in a designer dress, hair and makeup flawless, wearing a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Jessica, you made it," she exclaimed, air kissing near my cheek. "Everyone's already here." I followed her into the foyer, noting the recent renovations that hadn't been there during my last visit. New hardwood floors, updated light fixtures, and artwork that I recognized from galleries I could never afford to shop in. The living room was filled with family members, most of whom I hadn't seen since Amanda's wedding. Aunt Patricia and Uncle James, our cousins from Connecticut, Dad's brother Uncle Robert and his wife Nancy, and several family friends who had known us since childhood. My parents were seated near the fireplace, Mom animated in conversation with Brian's mother, Dad looking healthier than he had in years. "Jessica, darling," Mom called out, beckoning me over with a wave that suggested I should hurry. "We were just discussing Amanda's news." "I thought that was coming after dinner," I said, forcing a smile as I took a seat across from them. "Oh, we don't know the details yet," Mom replied. "Amanda's being very mysterious. But she says it's wonderful news for the family business." My stomach tightened. So my suspicions had been correct. Dinner was a masterpiece of presentation. The dining room table, extended to seat 16, was decorated with elaborate centerpieces and name cards in calligraphy. I found myself seated between Cousin Megan, who immediately launched into stories about her children, and Uncle Robert, who was more interested in his bourbon than conversation. Throughout the meal, I noticed curious glances directed my way. Whispered comments between relatives stopped abruptly when I looked in their direction. Amanda held court at the head of the table, Brian at her side, both of them radiating confidence and success. The turkey is from an organic farm in Vermont, Amanda explained as Brian carved. And the vegetables are all locally sourced. No one mentioned that I had been the one to cook Thanksgiving dinner for the past 3 years, while Mom supervised and Amanda called from New York with last-minute suggestions. As dessert was being served, Amanda tapped her glass with a spoon. The room fell silent, all eyes turning toward her. Brian and I want to thank everyone for coming today, she began, her voice carrying that practiced enthusiasm she used in client presentations. Family means everything to us, which is why we wanted you all here for our special announcement. Brian stood beside her, his hand on her shoulder in a gesture of support. Amanda's smile widened. As some of you know, Dad's business has been through some challenges during his illness. But thanks to his recovery and some strategic planning between Brian and myself, we have exciting news. My fingers gripped the napkin in my lap as she continued. We're expanding Davis Office Supplies into a regional chain. The first new location will open in Cambridge next spring, with 2 more locations planned for next year. Approving murmurs rippled through the room. Mom clasped her hands together in delight while Dad nodded proudly. But that's not all, Amanda continued. Dad has agreed that it's time for the next generation to take the reins. Effective January 1st, I'll be taking over as CEO of Davis Enterprises, with Brian serving as CFO. The room erupted in applause and congratulations. I sat frozen, unable to process what I was hearing. The business I had saved, the operations I had modernized, was being handed to Amanda and her husband without so much as a discussion. Amanda wasn't finished. Her gaze shifted to me, her expression hardening almost imperceptibly. There's one more thing we need to address. As we move forward with this new chapter for our family business, we need complete unity and trust among the leadership team. She set down her glass and straightened her shoulders. Jessica, we've noticed some concerning behavior from you recently. Your possessiveness about the business operations, your accusations about financial irregularities, your general attitude of resentment. The room grew uncomfortably quiet. All eyes turned to me. The family has discussed this at length. Amanda continued, her voice now carrying an authoritative edge. Mom, Dad, Brian, and I, along with our business advisors, we've come to a difficult decision. She stood up, looking down at me from the head of the table. We took a vote, and it was unanimous. You're not welcome in the family business anymore. In fact, until you can adjust your attitude and accept the changes that are happening, you're not really welcome in the family at all. Gasps and murmurs filled the room. My mother looked down at her plate, unable to meet my eyes. Dad stared straight ahead, his jaw set firmly. The extended family members exchanged uncomfortable glances. You've become toxic, Jessica, Amanda declared. Your jealousy and controlling behavior are harmful to this family. Everyone agrees. As if on cue, heads around the table began to nod. Uncle Robert muttered, always was a bit strange, that one. Aunt Patricia sighed dramatically. Even Cousin Megan, who had been cheerfully discussing her children's soccer achievements minutes earlier, shifted away from me slightly. You can't be serious. I finally managed to say, my voice barely audible. We're very serious, Amanda replied. Mom, tell her. My mother cleared her throat, still not meeting my eyes. Jessica, dear. We think you need some time to reflect. You've done enough controlling us. It's time to let the professionals handle things. The professionals. As though my years of sacrifice and hard work counted for nothing because I lacked Amanda's prestigious degree and connections. The room spun around me. 3 years of putting my life on hold. 3 years of caring for Dad when no one else would. 3 years of saving the business that was now being handed to my sister on a silver platter. And their response was to vote me out of the family. A strange calm settled over me. I had prepared for this, hadn't I? Some part of me had known exactly what was coming. I laughed softly, the sound cutting through the tense silence. Everyone stared at me as though I'd lost my mind. Well, if I'm not family anymore, I said, reaching into my bag, then I suppose you won't need this. I placed the manila folder on the table and slid it toward Amanda. She frowned, confusion replacing her triumphant expression. What is this? She demanded. Open it, I replied. My voice steady. I think the whole family should see what's inside. Amanda hesitated, then reached for the folder. As she opened it and began to scan the first page, her face drained of color. She frantically flipped through the documents, her hands beginning to shake. This is nothing, she stammered. These are just normal business transactions. Read the account numbers, Amanda. I said loudly enough for everyone to hear. Tell everyone whose personal account received $57,000 from the business over the past year. Brian peered over her shoulder, his expression shifting from confusion to shock. Amanda, what is this? Amanda's composure cracked completely. She slammed the folder shut. This is a misunderstanding. Jessica is manipulating these records to make me look bad. The bank statements don't lie, I replied calmly. Neither do the timestamps showing when the transfers were made, or the IP address they originated from, which happens to match your home computer. Chaos erupted around the table. Brian was demanding answers from Amanda. Dad had snatched up the folder and was examining the contents with growing horror. Mom was repeatedly saying, there must be some mistake, while the extended family alternated between stunned silence and excited whispers. I stood up, surprisingly steady on my feet despite the adrenaline coursing through me. I didn't just bring copies for you. I've documented everything. The authorities already have a complete record of the embezzlement. Amanda's face contorted with rage and panic. You had no right. This is my family's business. No, Amanda, I replied, gathering my bag. It was our family's business. The one I saved while you were building your perfect life. The one I modernized while you were on vacation in Bali. The one you've been stealing from while planning to push me out. I looked around the table at the relatives who had so quickly sided against me minutes earlier. You all voted me out of the family? That's fine. I've learned that family is about actions, not blood, and none of you acted like family when it mattered. As I turned to leave, Dad called after me, his voice breaking. Jessica, wait. We need to discuss this. I paused at the doorway. I've waited 3 years, Dad. I'm done waiting. Happy Thanksgiving. Walking out of Amanda's perfect house, hearing the raised voices and accusations behind me, I felt a weight lifting from my shoulders. The confrontation I had feared for so long was finally over, and somehow I had emerged stronger than I'd entered. I was barely in my car when my phone began ringing. Dad's name flashed on the screen, followed by Mom's, then 3 calls from Amanda in rapid succession. I silenced the phone and drove to Michael's apartment, where he was waiting with a cup of hot chocolate and a sympathetic ear. How bad was it? He asked as I collapsed onto his couch. Worse than I imagined, then exactly as I planned, I replied, recounting the evening's events while he listened without interruption. So they actually told you they voted you out of the family? Michael shook his head in disbelief. After everything you did for them? Amanda's exact words, I confirmed. And everyone nodded along, even relatives who watched me care for Dad for 3 years. My phone continued to light up with messages and missed calls throughout the evening. I finally turned it off completely, allowing myself one night of peace before facing the inevitable fallout. The next morning, I awoke on Michael's couch to the sound of someone pounding on his door. Michael peered through the peephole and sighed. It's your parents, he said quietly. I nodded, steeling myself. There was no avoiding this conversation. They burst in as soon as Michael opened the door, both looking like they hadn't slept. Mom's makeup was smudged, and Dad's shirt was buttoned incorrectly. Jessica, thank God, Mom exclaimed. We've been worried sick. Why? I asked coolly. I'm not family anymore, remember? Dad winced. That was Amanda talking. We never should have gone along with it. But you did. I pointed out. You sat there and let her humiliate me in front of everyone after I spent 3 years keeping your business and household running. Mom sank onto the couch, her composure cracking. "We didn't know about the money, Jessica. You have to believe that. I told Dad about the irregular transfers months ago." He dismissed it. Dad's face flushed with shame. I didn't want to believe it. Amanda is my daughter too, and she was so convincing about having plans for the business. And I was what? Just the placeholder until Amanda decided she wanted what I had built. "No," Dad protested weakly. "You were always important. Important enough to push aside when something better came along," I replied. "Important enough to expect sacrifice from, but not important enough to value or protect." Michael, who had been standing silently by the door, cleared his throat. "Perhaps we should all sit down and discuss this calmly." We moved to his small dining table. I remained composed while explaining exactly what I had discovered about Amanda's embezzlement, how long it had been going on, and the evidence I had compiled. "The bank records show transfers dating back 18 months, I explained. "Small amounts at first, then larger sums as she realized no one was monitoring the accounts except me. And when I raised concerns, I was labeled controlling and pushed out." Dad put his head in his hands. "I trusted her. She's my daughter." "So am I said quietly. "But you chose to see what was convenient." "What happens now?" Mom asked, fear evident in her voice. "You mentioned authorities. I've documented everything and prepared a report. But I haven't filed anything officially yet," I admitted. "I wanted you to see the evidence first." Relief washed over their faces, quickly replaced by a new anxiety. "Amanda is hysterical," Mom said. "Brian took her to their lake house after confronting her about the money. She admitted everything to him. She admitted it." I was genuinely surprised. Amanda had never taken responsibility for anything in her life. Dad nodded grimly. When Brian saw the evidence, he demanded answers. She broke down and confessed she's been taking money to maintain their lifestyle. Apparently, they're deeply in debt despite their appearances. The house, the cars, the vacations. All financed by credit cards and, it seems, our company funds. The revelation didn't shock me as much as it might have. Amanda had always prioritized appearances over substance. "What do you want to happen, Jessica?" Dad asked, his voice heavy with the weight of the situation. It was the first time in years anyone in my family had asked what I wanted. "I want acknowledgement of what I've done for this family," I said firmly. "I want recognition of my role in saving the business. I want an apology from everyone who sat at that table yesterday and sided against me. And I want protection for myself and my future." Mom looked confused. "Protection? We would never hurt you." "Jessica, you already have," I replied. "Multiple times. I need legal protection, a formal role in the business with clearly defined authority, and agreements that can't be overturned on Amanda's whim." Dad nodded slowly. "That's more than fair. We can meet with the company attorney next week." "And Amanda?" I asked. My parents exchanged troubled glances. "She needs help," Dad admitted. "Financial counseling at minimum, possibly therapy. Brian is insisting she take responsibility and make restitution. She needs to face consequences," I insisted. "Real ones, not just a family intervention." "What are you suggesting?" Mom asked, her voice tight. "The money needs to be repaid in full. She needs to step down from any role in the company. And she needs to publicly apologize to me in front of the same audience that witnessed her trying to cast me out." Dad nodded again. "We'll make it happen." As they prepared to leave, Mom hesitated at the door. "Will you come home, Jessica?" "No," I replied firmly. "My apartment is my home now. I need that independence." They left with promises to arrange a family meeting within the week. After they were gone, Michael gave me an appraising look. "You handled that remarkably well," he said. "They came in expecting to manage you, and you ended up managing them." I smiled tiredly. 3 years of crisis management teaches you a few things about handling difficult conversations. The family meeting occurred 3 days later at my parents' house. Everyone who had been present at Thanksgiving was required to attend. Amanda and Brian arrived last, her eyes red from crying, his expression grim with contained anger. Dad had taken my requirements seriously. The company attorney presented documents establishing me as Chief Operating Officer with clear authority and protection from arbitrary removal. A repayment plan was outlined for Amanda, requiring her to return all misappropriated funds plus interest. When it came time for apologies, most family members offered perfunctory expressions of regret for any misunderstanding. Uncle Robert actually had the audacity to suggest that we were all under Amanda's influence, as though being easily swayed absolved him of responsibility. Amanda's apology came last. She stood before the assembled family, her usual confidence absent. "I betrayed everyone's trust," she began, her voice shaking. "Especially yours, Jessica. You sacrificed everything for this family while I took advantage. I stole from the business you saved, then tried to push you out when you discovered the truth. There's no excuse for what I did." The words were right, but something in her tone made me doubt their sincerity. Nevertheless, it was a public acknowledgement of her wrongdoing and my contributions, which was what I had demanded. In the weeks that followed, our family began a tentative reconstruction. Dad and I worked together at the business, my official role now matching the responsibilities I had carried unofficially for years. Mom made awkward but genuine efforts to connect with me, inviting me to lunch and actually listening when I spoke. Amanda and Brian sold their house to help repay the embezzled funds and moved to an apartment in a less prestigious neighborhood. The expansion plans were put on hold indefinitely. Through it all, I maintained my boundaries, continuing my education and building a life independent of my family's drama. Michael remained my steadfast support, his friendship deepening as we navigated the aftermath together. "You know," he said one evening as we shared dinner at my apartment, "most people wouldn't have had the courage to do what you did." "Most people haven't spent 3 years being invisible," I replied. "After a while, you either disappear completely or you make yourself impossible to ignore." I had chosen the latter, and for the first time in years, I was being seen for who I truly was. 6 months after the Thanksgiving confrontation that changed everything, I sat in Eleanor's office at the accounting firm, barely containing my excitement as she reviewed my transcript. A4. 0 GPA while working part-time and dealing with family drama of epic proportions, she remarked, setting down the papers. "Jessica Davis, you continue to impress me." "Thank you for the scholarship recommendation," I replied. "I couldn't have completed my degree without it." Eleanor smiled warmly. "The firm's education program exists precisely for promising employees like you." Now, about that full-time position we discussed. I left her office with a formal job offer as a junior accountant, contingent upon completing my degree the following semester. At 29, I was finally building the career I had deferred for so long. My apartment had become a sanctuary, decorated simply but with pieces that brought me joy, plants thriving on every windowsill. It was modest compared to Amanda's former showplace, but it was mine, earned through my own efforts. Amanda's situation had evolved in ways none of us had anticipated. After the initial shock and shame, she had been required to perform 200 hours of community service as part of a private resolution negotiated through the company attorney. Surprisingly, the experience had affected her deeply. "I've been working at a women's shelter," she told me during one of our infrequent coffee meetings. "Some of these women gave up everything for families that abandoned them. It's made me think about what you went through." I remained cautious about Amanda's apparent transformation. Words came easily to her, sincerity less so. But I acknowledged that people could change when forced to confront the consequences of their actions. The repayment plan was proceeding on schedule. Amanda had taken a mid-level position at a small marketing firm, while Brian had severed financial ties with her, though they remained married and in counseling. The carefully curated image of success had been replaced by a more authentic, if less glamorous, reality. My relationship with my parents evolved gradually. Dad and I developed a new professional rapport at the office, where my role as COO was now respected throughout the company. We still had occasional disagreements about business decisions, but they were handled as differences between equals rather than as a parent dismissing a child. You were right about the inventory system. He admitted one afternoon after my forecasting model had proven more accurate than his traditional approach. I should have listened to you sooner. Those small acknowledgments meant more than grand apologies. They represented a fundamental shift in how he perceived me. Not as his fallback caretaker, but as a competent professional with valuable insights. Mom's journey toward understanding was slower and more complicated. Her identity had been so wrapped up in Amanda's achievements that she struggled to recognize the value in my different path. I never understood why you couldn't be more ambitious. She confessed during a rare heart-to-heart conversation. Amanda always reached for the stars, while you seemed content to stay grounded. I wasn't content, Mom, I corrected her. I was responsible. There's a difference. She nodded slowly. I see that now. Being grounded is what saved this family when the rest of us were reaching for stars that didn't matter. The extended family, who had so quickly sided against me at Thanksgiving, made various attempts at reconciliation. I accepted their overtures politely but maintained emotional distance. Some relationships were worth rebuilding, others had revealed fundamental flaws that couldn't be repaired. Through it all, Michael remained my constant support. Our friendship had deepened into something more, though we were taking things slowly, both aware of the significant transitions in my life. You need to finish healing before we complicate things, he said one evening as we walked through the park near my apartment. I'm not going anywhere. His patience and understanding were refreshing after years of being rushed and pressured by my family's demands. The most significant healing came through building a chosen family around me. Eleanor became a mentor and maternal figure who valued my contributions. Classmates from my accounting program became friends who shared my interests and ambitions. Michael's circle welcomed me warmly, providing connections unrelated to my complicated family history. For the first Thanksgiving after the confrontation, I decided to host a dinner at my apartment. Not for my biological family, with whom I had shared a subdued and formal Christmas, but for the people who had supported me through my transformation. Michael helped me cook. Eleanor brought wine. Classmates contributed side dishes. My small apartment was filled with laughter and genuine affection, no hidden agendas or old resentments simmering beneath the surface. To chosen family. Michael toasted, raising his glass. The people who see us as we are and value us accordingly. As we enjoyed our meal, I reflected on the journey of the past year. The painful confrontation had been necessary to break patterns that had trapped me for years. By standing up for myself, I had forced everyone, including myself, to recognize my worth. Dad had finally acknowledged my contributions, telling me during a recent business meeting, "This company wouldn't exist without you, Jessica." I should have said that years ago. Mom was learning, albeit slowly, to see me as an individual rather than as a counterpoint to Amanda. During our last lunch, she had actually asked about my career aspirations and listened to my answer without comparing it to Amanda's path. Amanda herself was navigating a humbled existence, the carefully constructed facade of perfection shattered by her own actions. Whether her apparent insights would lead to lasting change remained to be seen. But the power imbalance between us had been permanently altered. Most importantly, I had reclaimed my own narrative. No longer the invisible caretaker or the family doormat. I had established boundaries that protected my hard-won sense of self-worth. I had discovered that standing up for myself wasn't selfish, it was necessary. Jessica? Michael's voice brought me back to the present moment. Everyone's sharing what they're grateful for. I looked around at the faces of my chosen family. People who valued me for exactly who I was, not for what I could do for them or how I could advance their agendas. I'm grateful for clarity, I said. For finally understanding that respect must be mutual, that sacrifice should be acknowledged, and that true family is defined by actions, not blood. As conversations flowed around me, I felt a profound sense of peace. The path forward wasn't perfect or without challenges, but it was mine to define. I had learned that sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself is to walk away from people who cannot see your worth, even if those people are family. The painful Thanksgiving confrontation had been a necessary catalyst for change, forcing truths into the open that had festered in darkness for too long. From that breaking point had come the possibility of genuine healing, not by returning to old patterns, but by creating new, healthier ones. As the evening wound down and my guests prepared to leave, I felt a sense of completion. The cycle of sacrifice and invisibility had been broken. In its place was a life guided by mutual respect, clear boundaries, and authentic connections. I had finally learned the most important lesson, that I deserved to be valued, not despite my differences from my achievement-oriented family, but because of the strength, resilience, and integrity those differences represented. What about you? Have you ever had to stand up to family members who took you for granted? How did you handle it? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. Don't forget to like this video if it resonated with you, subscribe for more stories about setting boundaries and finding your worth, and share with someone who might need to hear that it's okay to protect yourself, even from family. Thank you for being part of my journey, and remember, your worth isn't determined by those who fail to see it.